So that's the moment I knew I was going to join the company because and at that time, the first few months, to be honest, I didn't even have any salary, but why did I do it? It was because, it was a startup and I felt like if we put in the effort, we put in the hard work and we do we put in the grind. And then if if the direction is correct and if we hire the right people for the team to be able to all work together and deliver this amazing product, hard work will pay off. But obviously, hard work, you got to have the right direction. If the direction is wrong, then you're just going to go to the wrong direction from the very beginning, right?
Hi everyone, Tu Lee here, one half of the China EVs and More duo. Lei and I are always thinking about different ways to bring you, our audience, relevant and compelling content about the China EV, AV, and mobility sectors, especially now that several companies that we've tracked over the last 70 or so episodes have become global phenomenon. China EVs More Max is where we bring you that special content in the form of conversations we have with special guests from those sectors. In this episode, Lei and I speak with Frank Wu, head of design at JIDU, the joint venture smart EV startup formed by Baidu and Geely in March 2021. JIDU recently unveiled the Robo One concept, production robocar, which previews the upcoming production model that'll be unveiled in the fall and start deliveries in the first half of 2023. I had the privilege of being one of the few non-employees to get a sneak peek at the Robo One when I visited Baidu headquarters recently, and I was quite impressed with the concept vehicle. The design was clean, mature, and the lines flowed well. JIDU likely has a hit on its hands in 2023 if the software-hardware integration and manufacturing teams can execute on the concept's promise. Frank shares his journey from a 6-year-old kid having arrived in the US from China all the way to joining JIDU last year as head of design based in Shanghai, where he was originally born. He talks about work culture at JIDU, his experience working at BAIC in Beijing, Cadillac in the US, stints with Ford, Honda, and Mazda, and how his artist dad influenced his decision to study transportation and industrial design, which ultimately led him to attend the College of Creative Studies, or CCS, in Detroit, and that kicked off his automotive design career. This is the first time Frank has shared these intimate details of his life journey as an automotive designer. Hi, Frank. Thanks for joining us. I know you're busy, so Lei and I appreciate you carving out this time to chat so we can learn more about you and what you've been up to and the recent big announcement from your company. I feel like we're brothers since you went to school and worked in Metro Detroit, my hometown, right? I haven't lived in Michigan for over 20 years, but I visited every year until COVID. So I still feel that's my home. My family's there. And so we can talk about some fun stuff towards the end. But please tell us about yourself, Frank, your career arc. I'm particularly interested in how you ended up in Detroit, going to CCS, and spending the first part of your career with Cadillac.
First of all, thanks for having me, guys. It's really a pleasure. I think it's going to be a fun podcast. I was originally born in Shanghai, and then eventually I moved to the States when I was 6 years old. So one of the regrets that I have, as an adult, is I never really had the chance to learn Chinese in terms of reading and writing. A lot of times, while living here, I can't understand. And man, I'll tell you, during the lockdown time, it was not easy. There were sentences and all that stuff, and I couldn't read it. So, and I was locked in myself, so it was not easy. But with that said, so I pretty much, started, studying in first grade in the States, and then all the way till end of my college year, right? So with the CCS question, to quickly answer it, so my father, he's an artist. So he's somebody that I really, really look up to, really as a not only a father figure, but a role model. And I'm sure, there are, some of us that look up to our parents that way. And the reason why is because, he raised me pretty much my entire life, all the way when I, finished high school and left off to college. And it wasn't easy because back then, he was, as a single father and from California, we moved out in different counties because he's a freelance artist. So, I remember back in the days, he used to attend these county fairs, and then he'll do sculptures, what we call it instant sculptures of people's sort of portrait face sculpture. And he does them like absolutely phenomenal. I mean, he can literally like create a very, 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 very identical and capture sort of the soul of the customer within like 20 minutes. And then that's something that I can never do, not in my lifetime. So yeah, so he would, often, we would move around. And we started off first. We moved to California within, LA. I remember Glendale, and then Monterey Park. The Alhambra.
Yep.
Areas.
Yep.
Yeah, and then later on, I moved to Las Vegas actually, and that was right when I finished my elementary school. So I was, like from first grade to I think it was like fifth grade. So the first 5 years I was in California, and then my middle school years I was in Las Vegas, and that was between sixth grade, seventh grade, and I think eighth grade, right?
Okay.
After Vegas, we actually briefly moved back to LA. I remember, I think it was like over the course of the summer period, like it was a summertime. And then my dad, he was working in Santa Monica, the pier. Yeah. So when I go there, even, I mean, even today, I have sort of this deja vu of my childhood,
Right.
when I used to walk by the main street and listen to live jazz and watch performance art and, street artists, perform. It's just very, very, beautiful memory. And then I remember very clearly that time my dad he was working on the sculpture for a client for one of the customer, and then that customer happened to be the same customer that visited him 10 years ago. So so he saw him at the exact same location, which was the Santa
Wow.
Monica Pier, and he came to look for him. And the reason why, which we were completely shocked, was that he wanted to hire my father to work for him. And what happened was the first portrait sculpture my dad did of him, he brought home, and then he showed it to his family, his wife, and his friends, and everybody was like, "This guy is incredible! Like he can do it in 20 minutes." I mean, so essentially, so what happened is he actually owns a robotic wax company. So they call it animatronics, right? So they make these robots that are lifelike robots. And so essentially, he came and offered my dad a job, and then that was sort of I think one of the big transition where we moved from the West Coast to the East Coast.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was like the real transition, and then that was exactly when I finished my middle school, and then we went to the East Coast, and I remember we were in Bowling Green because the company was in Bowling Green.
That's a lot different than California.
Yeah, let's put it I was like, where's this place? I was like, are we there yet? and essentially, that this is the place. But no, I love Bowling Green because I went to Bowling Green not too long ago. I think it was like 6 years ago, right before I left and moved to China. I went to Bowling Green to attend his retirement party.
Oh, nice.
But we kept in contact throughout all these years. It's a very beautiful memory. So anyway, so we were there, and then it was a very beautiful city. People are super friendly. Very, very small town. Very, very small town. And so what happened was we ended up living there for not too long. I think it was just like a few months actually. The reason why was because my dad, he had a few friends that lived in New York City, and then they called him up and said, hey, listen, like why don't we come to New York, and like it's a big city, and also, there's a lot of business, here, with the street artists. And then that's when we moved to New York, and then and that's where I pretty much started my high school years. And then next thing ninth grade, 10th grade, 11th, 12th, and done with high school. And then I pretty much started 10 university. But I remember I actually visited Art Center. I visited Art Center before CCS actually. And the reason why is because, we used to live in California, right? So, and,
Yep.
and I remember very, very clearly, there's this childhood story where I was actually in elementary school in California. That was, when I was a child. And my dad and I, we were at a park and we were playing basketball, just him and I. And that day, what happened was we were in one of those big parks where there's like a lake in the park, right? And the lake was right next to the basketball court. And I shot the ball and I missed the rim, and then it literally just rolled off the sort of the grass, and it went into the lake. And then we waited for like an hour because the ball was like floating all over the place, right? So so I still remember till today that very clearly. My dad was like, "Hey, what do you want to do with your life, when you grow up?" And that time I honestly didn't know. I was like, I don't know. And I said, maybe something has to do with art or something has to do with like, what you do, Dad. And he was like, there's a very good design school here in California. He said, like Asian parents, he's like, kind of, bragging about his friends' kids. He's like, I got a friend. Their son, goes to
Yep.
UCLA. His daughter goes to UC Berkeley. And then
The Asian Guild. That's the Asian
yeah,
Guild.
yeah, and then he mentioned about Art Center, and he was like, Art Center. He's like, because we lived in California, so we didn't really know about other schools around the around the East Coast or the Midwest. So, and he said, I know a friend. His son went to Art Center, and he studied this thing called transportation industrial design, and now he graduated, and then he's in China now, and he's doing really really good. And he was like, this is something that you should consider. Well, that was a long time ago, and then so that memory always kind of forecasting in my head. So then that's why I went to visit Art Center, and when I arrived, it was a very very sort of ironic moment because they happened to have the Art Center summer show. I think it was summer show, or was it like it was the graduation show. And then I remember I was walking through the school campus, and then was checking out the students putting up their graduation work. There's the fine art, there's a sculpture, the advertisement, and photography and entertainment art, and I was like mind blown away, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. But like the moment I got into the basement and they opened up the door into the transportation design studio, that was like the holy grail moment. Seriously, like even till today, I can still remember so vividly because I was like, "Holy crap!" I was like I have so many questions. I was young, and I was like, "Did they draw this?" I was like, "Did they make this model?" And then we had the admissions officer obviously was giving us a tour, and then I think there was some like graduating seniors. They were like introducing their work, and I was like, "This is exactly what I want to do with my life." And that was it. That was it. And then
Very cool, man. Very cool.
so what happened was this story I've actually never told anybody actually. So you guys are probably the exclusive guys to hear it. So how did I end up going to CCS? So that's the story. So what happened was at the same time, that time there was a gentleman from AAU. His name's called Tom Matano.
Frank, let me interrupt you 1 second. For our audience, CCS is the College for Creative Studies, and it's an art school based in Detroit proper, and it's where a lot of automotive designers go to school and end up at a Ford or a Stellantis or a GM.
Correct. Correct. So Tom Matano, he called me up, and then AAU is a great school in San Francisco. And then he said, Frank, he's like, I think you're great here. We would love to have you here. And then unfortunately I didn't go to San Francisco to check out the school until after I even graduated and started working as a professional. But then I checked out the tuition. That was the part that kind of hurt it. So the moment like everybody greeted you with a very happy smile, I was like, hi, how's that? Oh my god, we'd love to have you here. And then I was like, I would love to be here. And then the moment they handed me the handbook, and then the tuition page, I was like, my smile just kind of disappeared. So I mean, the reason why was because my parents, they didn't have unfortunately didn't have the financial ability to be able to pay for my college. Actually, I paid through my college by myself throughout. And how did I do it? A combination of a little bit of everything. There's obviously the big part is the student loan, and I got a huge grant and scholarship from CCS later, and then a part-time job, and then at the same time, back then when I was in college, I played a little bit of poker throughout the weekends, and
Nice. Rounders.
it was fun.
Oh man. And probably a little dangerous too, because it's
No,
Detroit. So.
we didn't play. We actually played in Canada. It was
Oh,
like
right.
30 minutes
Okay.
ride. Yeah.
Oh
So
man.
that was kind of like, I
Yeah.
guess that's the answer, right? So that was kind of like what happened with our center was the tuition was, really, really high. And that time I think compared to CCS, that time was like almost like twice. And then the cost of living in Pasadena was like, not cheap at all. So and then
Yeah.
I remember there's a bleak store back then before it got purchased. It used to be called the Art Store, and then it's literally right in the heart of downtown Pasadena. And then my dad used to go there to buy clay when we were living in California when he used to work in Santa Monica Pier. So anyway, so due to that, so I started looking around other places and found, obviously there's Pratt Institute, and then there's the RISD, the Rhode Island School.
Yeah. RISD. Yep.
Yes, and then obviously there's the CIA, right, Cleveland Institute of Art, and then University of Cincinnati and all that. But pretty much cut to the chase. So I found out about CCS, and then back then, I think you guys probably heard of the website called cardesignnews.com.
Yeah. Yep.
So cardesignnews.com during my time, it was very different. It was very different than today. That time, I don't remember there was like I correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember there was subscription that time. I think it was like open source to everybody, and I remember one of the hottest area in the website was actually the forum, and it was almost like like Riddick, right? It's like people they post stuff, and then there's a huge discussion
Yep.
thread, and that time it was actually quite cool because there's some hotshots, like very good friends of mine, in the car design industry. Back then, we were all in high school, or we were, like looking for school, and we were all in that group, and we're talking, and then we're talking about, hey, who's going to do a hot BMW sketch? Who's going to do a hot Mercedes or Mazda sketch, right? And then we would actually do it at home and then post it on Cars and News, the chat group. And then people would review it and comment it, and it was super nice because back then I remember people were giving very, very constructive and positive comments on how to help these young kids grow as a car design student, and it was very, I'm not sure because I haven't really gone on the site too much recently, but I hope it's still there because that was one of the it was one of the, for me, it was one of the originality sort of feature of the car design news site because it's car design news, but then it was really attracting a lot of young designers that want to be car designers.
Sure.
So anyway, so long story short, so later on, that's how I end up at CCS. CCS, I went to Detroit. Too, I got to tell you that I got to be honest with you. I flew from New York, to Detroit. I bought a one way ticket, and I remember very clearly. I had two luggage bags, a backpack, and a display. I think it was like 20-inch display for my ink tablet. And when I arrived to the airport, I literally thought, I was like, I'm gonna finish school and I'm gonna be out. I was like, I'm gonna finish school and I'm gonna be out. I was like, I miss New York, I miss LA. I want to be in LA. I want to be, and I'm just, because I never lived in Detroit. I never even visited Detroit, except for once, which was when I went to CCS. Through the I think it was like this the virtual tour thing, and then the photos and the school, the facility is beautiful, very beautiful facility. And then downtown today, Detroit downtown is absolutely amazing. But when I was there, it wasn't as glamorous as today.
Yeah, it's when you were there, Detroit was still pretty dangerous place.
It was downtown and 8 Mile, those areas. It wasn't really, the first choice to go, right? The first place to go for people, unless you want to get yourself in trouble. But so, anyways, so that's how I pretty much started the next chapter of my life in Detroit. And like I said, when I arrived, I was like, I'm gonna finish my 4 years and I'm out of here. But then the moment I started to live there, and the moment I start to actually learn and embrace the city, seeing the positive, the beautiful side, but at the same time, the negative side of the city, and be able to be part of the community, that's when I really became like, I changed my entire perspective, and then we would go downtown and check out the Tigers game. We would check out I never I've been to the Lions game on very late stage before I was about to move out of Detroit, but go to downtown, hang out with friends. And then I remember there was this billiard club called the Magic Stick.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That
Mm-hmm.
place was a spot for
Yep.
us. It was fun. I got to tell you, I would love to have a Magic Stick in Shanghai. Like, I would go there like It was fun.
Magic stick's not fancy enough for sure.
It brings back so much beautiful memories. I remember, yeah. So, anyways, Magic. There was a lot of fun memories that happened at Magic Stick, and then there was the I think the restaurant or bar across the street called the Union, right?
Yep.
And then I think these were the only two areas like in the what is it like the downtown Woodwood area that actually had people, and then the other areas I think it wasn't as like as busy. So, and then that time we had around, I think it was like a few thousand applicants that applied. And then for the industrial design program, there was 120 students. I remember I counted very, very clearly, 120 students. And end of the first year, everybody wanted to try to get into the auto program, right? So we had obviously a review, or was it like an auto design review by the program chairman, and then by the full time faculties. And then that time I was like, I got to get into auto because I was paying tuition out of pocket. Student loan. Don't forget that time the student loan, the interest rate was 7.75%. I mean, I got to tell you, one thing is I still think this is absolutely ridiculous. Even today, I paid off my student loan, like twice as fast as my original retention plan, the repayment plan, the term for the before I think it was like 20-year payment, and I paid it back. I think it was like 10 years. But I seriously feel like that's a very big problem because students the people that really try hard to go to school, try to make a difference for themselves, and then take out student loans, out of pocket by themselves, end up getting sort of bashed by the interest rate. And people that are buying a freaking brand new car that is not necessarily a necessity when you can buy a used car, you can buy a pre-owned car, you can buy a good car, okay car, a crappy car, whatever it is. When you buy a brand new car, you get a like interest rate of only 2%, right? A house, for instance, I have a house in Michigan still. When I bought my house, my interest rate was only 4%. So this logic, I literally still don't understand. So I was very, very frustrated with that, to be honest. And that's when I was telling myself, I was like, I gotta get into the auto program. If I don't, then like I gotta find a plan B. Then I'm gonna probably go to art center. I'm gonna do something. I got into the auto program in the second year, and the second year, by the end of the second year, there's another cut. So there's another review. By the second cut, then if you get into the junior year auto program, then you're pretty much in, and you graduate as a car design major. So then the end of the second year, we did it again, and then I was really grinding and working my butt off, and I'm sure a lot of my fellow classmates did the same. We all did. It just depending on that extra step, that extra grind that everybody try to give. That I guess that the top guys getting the higher grade or getting to the program. So luckily and very fortunately, I got into the junior program and then finished the junior year. I got a few internship. I think one was one internship was actually at Lotus. At that time, it was in Southfield. Actually, it wasn't in Ann Arbor yet. It was at Southfield. And I remember I was working at Lotus for a while, and then my second internship was at Ford. So Ford was actually a very fun internship, to be honest, because I got to give big compliments to Ford because I had a very good experience. The way they set up everything, the welcome packet, the residence sort of the dormitory, and then the sort of the Ford trips and the tours and the assembly tours and the F-150 plan and all that. It was super fun. And then we also checked out a Ford GT sort of was racing through the proving ground. It was really fun. It was I mean as a naive student, it was like a very good exposure to what the industry was all about. And but the funny thing with the Ford was actually because I have a lot of friends that work at Ford today. I actually didn't think I was going to get the Ford internship because I actually when the Ford recruiting team came and they were recruiting the interns, and I got the notice very last minute by our was it the I guess the admissions
Career Opportunity
opportunity
Center.
center, whatever. And I got a very late notice, and then I literally was preparing the portfolio very very last minute, and then I submitted the portfolio, and then there was so many people waiting online. The entire junior and sophomore year and senior, everybody was applying. So I submitted it, and then after I submitted it, They're like, okay, guys, like we'll call you if there's anything. And then I literally just I went back home. So I went back home because that time I lived in downtown Detroit, and then CCS was in the Tubman, or not, what do you call it, the Walter Ford B building. The Walter Ford, right? So
Yep.
so I got back, and then like students, when there's like the interviews and stuff, you wear a t-shirt, and then it was super hot that day. I remember it was like summertime, right before the and then like I was wearing like a tie and a white button shirt, and I was so hot. And right when I got back, I like literally just ripped the tie apart, and then I just ripped my shirt, and then I turned on the AC, and then opened up a nice cold Coke. I wasn't drinking beer, but it was like a nice cold Coke, and then I was like just relaxing. And then what happened was suddenly I got a call. I was watching a movie or something. I forgot what I was doing. I know I was watching TV, like I was watching like a movie or something. And then, because I think it was like I don't know, it was I'm not sure, was it a weekend or was it a weekday? But I didn't have class that day. And then somebody was calling me, and then I looked up my phone, and I didn't recognize the number. So I actually thought it was a debt collector calling me. So I thought it was like the credit card debt collector calling me. So I didn't answer the phone. So later on, somebody left me a voicemail, and then I checked the voicemail, and it says, "Hi, this is who from Ford HR. We would love to have an interview with you. Can you be here in 5 minutes?" And I was like, "Holy crap! Like 5 minutes!" And then I literally, I mean, if you would have like recorded that thing, I literally jumped out of my couch, and then I just put on the button shirt. I didn't even have time to button it, and then I just grabbed the tie, ran for the run for my car, and then just literally just I speed entire Woodward, and then I just literally speed all the way to the Walter B building, and I parked where I don't even know the president, the ex president of CCS. His name is called Rick Rogers. I parked at Rick Rogers' parking spot, and ran to the interview studio. And then like the security guy was like, hey, you can't park here. Hey, you can't park here. So I literally just ran. I just blasted to the interview room. And then I like, as I was running, I was like tucking my shirt. And I was, almost like one of the scene from the Pursuit of Happiness, when he was like running from
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
jail, right, to the interview. It was like that, except, I had my pants on. But anyways, and then that's when I got there, arrived, we did the interview. It went really really well. And then later on, they I think they called me like a week later or 2 weeks later and said I got the internship. And then that's when I did the internship at Ford, and I had a very very good time. That time I remember Jay May, he was still there, and he would stop by the studio.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and
Yeah,
he would
yeah.
check out my sketch. He was like, "Hey, that's a cool sketch," and I was like, "Hey, thanks, Jay." And yeah, he's a really 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 cool guy. And then there's a lot of talented designers today. They're all like doing really really great. So I celebrate that moment. And then the funny thing is, I actually applied for GM internship that same year, and I got denied. So it's really ironic. I actually got denied for the internship.
How many designers do they hire for
Uh, usually
internships
about usually about two or
typically?
three per year for the summer internship.
Okay. Oh, so it's pretty hard to get then.
It's very selective, very, very selective, because they would also recruit students from our center and all over the country, right? So our center or CCS or you and the other schools. So I applied for GM, and I got a rejection letter. So and then that's when I ended up going to Ford. And then what happened was after the Ford internship was done, that's when I got an internship at Honda, and then that's when I flew to Tokyo, and it was in Saitama. Completely different, like again, right? So it's a very different culture, very different, very Japanese. It was quite serious, to be honest. It wasn't as humorous and casual as Ford or GM, but it was much more serious. I remember the supervisor in China. We call it a kuzan, like kuzan, right? Like manager supervisor. He's not really that high up, but he's kind of like like a supervisor. And the guy was like walking around the room. We got like a lot of interns. Honda took in a lot of interns. 90% are all local Japanese students. Some are from like Tokyo Communication Arts, and some are from other art schools around the country. And then a few is from US, and a few is from Europe, and I think was like one from Korea. And then everybody was like sketching, like literally when we arrived and we started sketching, like nobody like made any sound. It was like that silent. And you got this, like this the supervisor guy walking around in the lab coat, and it says Honda, Power Dreams. And he would walk around and then he'll look at everybody's sketch. And the moment you see like a cool sketch, you'll be like, oh, nice, really cool. And then everybody's like trying to impress him. All the students are like trying to like, explain their design. Oh, he's like, so this, like it was. I remember he kept saying, like nonstop all day. So so it was fun. It was fun. Like I said, it was a very culture. I had a very fun time in Japan. It's such a beautiful country. I want to go there again. But what happened was right after I finished my internship in Japan, I got a call from Mazda. And that was one of the actually a very big moment for me because Mazda, I remember, man, they were doing some like hot stuff. They were doing some really cool stuff. I mean, groundbreaking design for me. I mean, like the Ferrari. Remember the supercar, the car Ferrari? I mean, I think it was done by like I think it was a Franz and Lawrence team. That time they were like superstars to me. They're like my idols, right? So I gotta. But I think when I got the interview, I think they both left Mazda. I think they left, and then Iku Maeda-san, he became the head of design. And then that's when the new design DNA was introduced, and then it was super cool, still super cool. So I was super excited, and then I took the Shinkansen from Tokyo to Hiroshima, did the interview. Very awesome interview. The guys were really cool, and then it turned out great. And then what happened was when I was on my way back to Tokyo, that was when the second biggest earthquake ever recorded. I think the first one was Peru. It was like a 9.2 or 9.4 magnitude earthquake. And then I actually was there during that. Was it the nuclear plant was explosion? Right?
Yep. Fukushima.
Fukushima, yeah, Fukushima, and it's very near Tokyo, you know. But luckily, the actual tsunami didn't really hit Tokyo City, the epicenter. But a lot of the buildings, a lot of the roads, everything was very harshly damaged. So I was there until I got a plane ticket to head back to Detroit, again, that's a whole nother story. Like that's literally a whole movie, And then back to Detroit, that's when I was about to pretty much graduate, and then during the graduation show, we got a lot of the big OEM came in, a lot of the head of designs they came in, and design directors and managers came and checked out our work. And I remember the moment when Ed Welburn, he walked. Ed is a super cool guy, super cool guy. I really respect Ed because I think he's a very good leader. I think he's just a very good, not only someone that has very good taste, but very visionary, but also very just bottom line, very nice guy. And he was walking around the studio and he stopped by my work. And I remember, the students were all standing by the wall, like don't, like, bug the design bosses, like don't like try to just let people, have a good time and check out your guys' work. And if they're interested, then approach and, present your work. So he stopped by my wall and he was looking at it for a while. And then like one of my classmates was like, "Hey Frank, you should go and like talk about your work." And I was like nervous. Like that's Ed Welburn, like what am I going to say? I don't know what to say. So and then later on I approached and then I greeted Ed and I said, hi Ed, I'm Frank. This is my work. And then I pretty quickly introduced three of my projects, and he was really interested in it. And then I talked about one of the project was actually for the China market, and talk a little bit about my background, and then we had a very good chat. And then Ed handed me his business card and said, if you would like to have an interview, let me know. And I said, I would love to. And Cheryl Garrett, who was responsible for the head of design recruiting, and she's an absolutely wonderful lady, and she scheduled an interview with me for the GM design interview. I think it was like weeks later. But that time, I actually got I got the job offer from Ford and from Lotus and also from Mazda and from Honda. So I was literally, because you know how the guys, when they give you a job offer, they give you like, I think it was like 2 weeks like grace period. So if you don't respond, then it's terminated. So I was like, can we do it within like a week? Because I need to be able to decide. So anyways, and then later on, went to GM, did an interview. I met a few of the few of the directors and the design managers, and And it was a very good interview. And then later on, I think it was like a week or a week and a half later, I got the email and it says, "Congratulations, you've been offered a role as a designer Cadillac studio." And I was like, "Cadillac? I mean, that's a big honor."
So let me stop you there, Frank. Were you interviewing for a GM design studio and they put you in Cadillac? Is that how that worked?
Yes, because they didn't tell you what studio you were going to be in when you were in there. I think they were probably just, I mean, because I later on, was at GM for quite some time, so I know what the GM outreach and the recruiting and all that. So when you're interviewing a student, you don't usually tell them anything. You just pretty much get to know them, have them introduce themselves, and you as a judge or an interviewer, you have to analyze what is best fit for that candidate, right? So I was just pretty much introducing myself and my work, and then later on they said, "Hey, would you like to be in Cadillac soon?" I was like, "Heck yeah!" And also Cadillac. That time, I remember another very very memorable thing is that when I was at CCS my freshman year, I actually sent an email to the director of Cadillac. His name is Bob Boniface. So Bob is a super super nice guy. So Bob responded to me back. I didn't think somebody at that level would take the time to respond back to some random kid. Like we all know how busy we can get sometimes, right? So Bob took his time and he sent me back a very nice, sweet message. And he was like, "Frank, I wish you best of luck in CCS and everything. That was actually my first boss and my only boss at Cadillac.
Nice.
So Bob, he's if Bob's listening, Bob, hope everything's well. Really, really missed you. And but anyways, Bob, hopefully everything is all good. But when I got in there my first day, I met a very very dear mentor of mine. His name is Hoon Kim. So Hoon is a very very talented designer, and he was sort of like my first year mentor in the Cadillac studio. And I went through a lot of like as a young designer, there's so much to learn, right? So today, when I recruit a young designer fresh out of college, you're like, you should probably take a whole year to learn the trade, and that's what I was doing. And then how to understand the GVDP development process, how to understand going from a sketch to a scale model to a full size model, and then go from a full size to a sort of like what a rapid prototype or a RP model, right? And then by that stage, everything has to be much more the criteria of engineering has to be much more refined, and it's no longer just a concept. So anyway, Hoon and also my manager at that time, Taiki, the Cadillac was just an awesome studio. So I had a very good time. Bob is a cool guy. Taiki is a super nice guy, and then Hoon is a very very nice, just a good teacher, or I guess like a mentor. So and then of course we have a lot of other people that we met in the studio and in the GM Tech Center. But I pretty much most of my time in Cadillac, and later on, my last year was in Buick because Bob he went to Buick, and then like right when I found out, I asked Bob. I was like, "Bob, I was like, wherever you go, I want to go," and then that's when I transferred to Buick, and then I did my last year there. So anyway, so during the Cadillac time, a lot of memorable sort of things that happened, and a very very beautiful memory. My first project was CT6.
Okay.
Yeah, worked on CT6 with a very talented team, and we went from zero all the way to SOP. And then like again, this is a whole deep dive on a single project. There's so many people involved in, and it was a very very good first project experience as a young designer. And then later on, there's a few other projects. Obviously, it hasn't been publicly disclosed on the projects, but it's based on, let's say, the Omega platform. Then Ascala was another one.
Yeah.
So Ascala was also a very fun project.
That was unveiled at Pebble Beach, right?
Yes, it was.
So when you started, this was at Cadillac, this was roughly 10 years ago, roughly 11, 12, is that correct?
Around like 11 or 12 years ago. Yeah.
And this is before Cadillac had decided to move their headquarters to New York, right? And then they moved it back to Warren or Detroit, right? Right, Drew? You remember that? And also Frank?
Yeah.
I actually visited Cadillac's, what was it called in New York in 2017.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Cadillac House or something? Or
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So
And Frank, I actually worked in the tech center at the Cadillac building.
the Cadillac building. Yeah.
So, yeah, at the tech center, if you
Yeah,
remember
I
that.
know. I remember very
So,
well. Cadillac building. But yeah, but it was a very very Cadillac. Obviously, is probably one of the deep heartfelt memory that I've had as a professional car designer since graduation, and spent most of my career time there, and obviously met a lot of talented designers, a lot of great people, not just designers, just great people. Like we have very talented cast modelers, and then very talented clay modelers, some of the best in the world clay modelers, and also superstar cast modelers. And everybody has different personas, right? Everybody have different personalities. Some people are super talented, but they're very hard to work with. But you have to get to understand how to work with them, and that I think that was part of the experience, because when you just graduate from college, you're not used to working with other people, because when you're in college, you're all on your own, right? You're working on your own project, you're going to class, and you're kind of on your own. And I think college, one of the things I would actually really suggest is to have more collaboration projects between cross function professions or students, because it's actually a very very important part of life. Actually, that's something that I think a lot of times in college, at least for me, it wasn't very very exposed to.
well, let's do this, Frank, because we don't want to keep you forever, and we have a ton of questions because we want you to talk about JIDU and stuff too.
Sure,
So,
sure.
so maybe we fast forward to what brought you back to China.
Okay. So I think it was 2000 and end of 2017. So it was early 2018. So what happened was, I always knew that I was gonna one day work in China. I just didn't know when. I knew that when I just graduated from college, it wasn't at that time. It wasn't the right time for me, because I felt like I really wanted to be able to learn as much as possible from some of the best team in the world, right? The car design team in the world, and that's pretty much exactly what I did. And I think after the first project, second project, and the third project, I felt like it still wasn't the right time, and I felt like it had to be at least like 4 to 5 projects for me to be able to really understand the process from 0 to 1. And be able to learn your mistakes, and be able to, we call it like, to re-enhance these mistakes, so you don't make the same mistakes for the next project, right? And then during that time, I think it was like late 2017. I got an opportunity, to be able to connect with the management team in Beijing for Beijing Auto, like I mentioned. And then they flew me to Beijing, and then I chatted with them. I think it was like just like a 1 hour conversation. But what happened was, I never worked in China. I didn't know what it was going to be like. It was literally kind of like walking into the unknown. But then I felt like, it was a very, very big company. They had a very long history. It was actually ranked top 5 in China for the largest OEM. And I thought there was a lot of potential and a lot of growth. Let's put it that way, right? As a designer, for me to be able to do something a little bit more, I guess, better design. So like, because I feel like some of the old products that they did, it was kind of lackluster, and it wasn't very very, I guess, very very professional. But that's a whole long history, right? That's a whole long history. So anyway, I thought there was a lot of room for growth, and the conversation was really good. And then that's when I decided to pretty much take that leap of faith, and be able to start a whole new journey. And then I started, actually, I think it was like January 1st in 2018 in Beijing. So when I first moved to Beijing, and
Okay.
when I was moving to China, my family in Shanghai, they were asking me, why are you going to Beijing? Why are you not in Shanghai? So I told them, I said, I want to try out, different places. And also Beijing, is the capital of China. And I thought it was definitely an interesting place to be able to live and experience. So I didn't really think too much, to be honest. I just thought it was a very good opportunity, and I just want to give it a shot. And then, like I said, I always knew I wanted to come to China and work, as, the market is literally the biggest market in the world now, So that was the beginning journey. And
So you're in Beijing. You're working for Beijing Auto in 2018, right?
correct. And I was there for 3 years. and it was a very different kind of experience. It wasn't necessarily for me, I guess we had a lot of projects, right? So we had a lot of projects, and there's a lot of different models, and at the timing was all quite condensed, and we had to get new cars out and model year and facelifts out very fast. Like I said, like if I can try to make a very good example for everybody to get to understand one of the differences at GM, like I said, let's say if there's 18 months to 24 months of design, that time is very, very, I guess, consistent. So there's a consistent progress throughout each month, and there's these milestones and there's these deliverables. But when I was in Beijing, I guess what happened is, from my understanding, was that the product planning team, they want to do something very fast, so they would quickly initiate a study, I almost like an advanced, not really an advanced study, but more of a project study where they call it 预言, right? In Chinese, they call it 预言. And then there's the 立项, right? So the 立项 is when you initiate the actual official project. But 预言 is like, very, very, very low cost, low budget, where they just pretty much take out a few million RMB and start to have the design team working on the potential vehicle. And what happens is that they actually condense that time very, very small, where we have to spend like a lot of time, a lot of energy to quickly get out cars super fast for the top management to review, because they want to look at it as soon as possible without spending too much money, right? So they look at the hard model and they're like, this car is not bad, maybe we can do this, right? And then that's when they initiate kick off the actual project. And then that's when there's a lot of new inputs that comes in. So what happened is that, let's say we have like only, I don't know, like let's say 6 months to do the pre stage of the project for the design, where you literally had to pretty much finish the design in 6 months. And then after the 6 months period, that's when they kick off the project. And then that's when the project, the product planning, the program, the finance, the engineering, right? They all come in and start to evaluate your design and say, oh, this is over cost. This is, this we cannot make. Right. This, we don't have the ability to do this. We don't have the ability to do that. This supplier we cannot, support, or this we don't have the supply for, whatever it is. So anyway, so there's a lot of late inputs. I guess for me, it's kind of late input because the car, we spend so much energy to get it done in the first 6 months, and then later on we have to change everything. So essentially, that 14 months actually become longer in the course of the whole project, because there's so many late inputs, right? Like I said, so, and then this is not just for one project, but for pretty much every project. So and then I'm not trying to be negative or anything. I'm just pretty much trying to speak from my experience of what I've encountered, right? Because I was pretty much in charge of the entire brand design, from exterior to interior to color and trim to modeling and then UI.
Were you doing the ICE vehicles, or were you doing the
Both.
ArcFox?
Both.
Or
no, not the ArcFox. ArcFox,
the Beijing brand, right?
Yeah, ArcFox. They wanted me to work on the ArcFox, but it was just way too much work. I wasn't going to be able to do all that, because just for the Beijing brand, I think it was. Just think about it, because if I tell people that there's no way they're going to believe me, because they're going to be like, "Frank, that's impossible. Like, we've never even heard of something like that." In the course of 3 years, I worked on 24 to 25 projects in 3 years.
Yeah, Beijing had a lot of models.
Yeah, just imagine because that was a good question too, because you ask, is it ICE or is it EV? It was both. And to what Lei was saying, they actually have a lot of models. So imagine, like, for ICE, all the models times that by 2, because a lot of them are, in Chinese we call it 有改电, right? So it's like they integrate from the ICE into the BEV. So it's not an all new architecture. So if it was just IC, then probably would have been like 12 projects with the model year facelift and all new and maybe concept cars. But because it was IC and EV, and then the Beijing brand, they had the Beijing ICE and the Beijing EV, right? Like the EU5 and the EU7 and I think it was like the internal code name, we call it the C10. So imagine all those projects were like, hey, why don't you guys quickly start and then do a design and then do like a quick like a RP model And then later on, we'll evaluate if the design is good and if it fits like a potential, competitive sort of product in the marketplace. So when they, like I said, when they decide that, and then that's when they officially kick off the project. And then there's so much new inputs. I mean, literally the amount of new inputs require you to redesign the whole car. So that's a very different kind of experience to your question. If it's different than
There's not a traditional design freeze then. Is that what you're kind of saying? Like,
yeah, there's
it's
actually
more
that's a very
iterative?
that's a very good question. Actually, there isn't, because not anybody, but at a certain level of management, like a very high level of management, at any point they can pretty much come in and say, I don't like this design and I'm not going to support it and we should stop it. And then suddenly everything stops. I mean, I'm talking about like a pretty high level guy, not not a director, or like some sort of a, like, let's say the VP of sales, he can come in one day if he's having I'm just saying, like, let's say if he's having a bad day, or maybe he saw something that suddenly changed his mind, and he can send a WeChat, like a message, and say, I don't think we should work on this project anymore, and suddenly it just stops, right? Or let's say we have these design reviews, and then there's so many people that comes in, look at the car, and everybody gives inputs, right? Everybody's like, again, I'm just simply talking about the difference to give people kind of a perspective here. Okay, I want to be as positive and as I guess as objective as possible here. When you're in a certain type of company, the culture is very different. It's not saying that people have bad intent. I just think that they're just kind of used to that kind of process, right? Like these high up management, they want to feel like there's a sense of presence for them, and then that they have a say, I guess, right? When you have a design review, so first of all, there's 3 levels of design review. There's level 3, which is between the design team and the engineering team and the program team. That's a level 3 review. And a level 3 review is when the head of the program, or, like, let's say at GM, it'll be like a executive chief engineer, right? The head of the program, he's good. And then he'll set up a meeting for a level 2. So level 2 is when they invite the VP of sales, VP of brand, VP of R&D, and then the maybe a few other cross functions, right? So they'll come in, and then the CEO, So again, so at Beijing, I think the CEO, the PM, the head of project, the program, these guys they're all really nice guys. I mean, I got along with them very, very well. So we were able to have a very common language and be able to make things a lot more efficient. But what I'm saying is that
always constructive discussions then.
right, like, because they're all nice guys, they're all very smart. They know what you're talking about. It's just that a lot of times that was how it was before. Okay, that was how it was before, and then the CEO will come, and again, that's a level 2 review. So level 2 review, you got like usually about like 10 guys, or maybe sometimes 15, and then they'll come, and then you got to please everybody. So that's the hard part. So your design got to pass every single buddy's vote in order to pass level 2. And then obviously the biggest vote is from the CEO, right? But sometimes somebody, like, especially like the head of sales, he can say, I don't like this design. I don't think it's going to sell well in the market. And then suddenly what happened is, in China, we call it giving face, right? So the CEO might not say anything, right? Because nobody want to, step on each other's toes. So what happened is, then you got to change it, And luckily, when I was there for the 3 years, that didn't really happen. And then you might find that shocking. Actually, I went through a lot of design reviews, and we hardly not passed the review. Most times we passed the review. And the reason why was because before the review, I actually had to go and talk to each one of them almost. I had to, like, invite them to the studio. I want to show them the car to let them express what they had to say. So then they don't say it like at the review, at a like a very, like at the NFL, we call it blitz, right? So there's no blitz coming out on a level 2 review, and then causing me to, go back to the drawing board.
You don't get sabotaged, basically.
Right. So I'll invite people over to the studio and have them look at it. And then the funny thing is, when there's a one-on-one, so when they're one-on-one with you, they're much more chill. They're much more expressive. And there's none of that, I'm the boss kind of thing, It's more like, hey, I think that's kind of cool, What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And there's a very, very nice constructive conversation. But when there's a group of big bosses, right, that's when everybody's like trying to flex their muscle, and it's a very different kind of design review kind of thing. It's for me, I feel like it's not what a lot of designers want to see. But luckily, again, we passed most of all the reviews. So after the level 2 review, then there's the level 1. So that's the big boss review. That's the chairman review. And the chairman review, we call it the DRC, right? And even in GM, they call it DRC, but GM DRC is it's different terms. GM DRC means Design Review China. So you got the boss from GM China coming in, looking at the design at the GM Tech Center in Warren. But for us, DRC is Design Review Chairman. Okay, so it's essentially very 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 high position review, and the chairman can come in. And then if he likes it, then it's pretty much done deal. I mean, not really, but pretty much done deal. When I say not really, it's because even if the chairman likes it, a lot of times people in the working level, they might not support it, right? And if they don't support it, then they'll make your job a little bit harder. But for most cases, when chairman review is passed, that's when everybody pretty much enforce what the command is going to be. So luckily, when I was at Beijing, our chairman, our previous chairman, Mr. Chairman Xu, I call him Chairman Xu, he's a super nice guy. So he's a very, very, very straightforward guy. He's very straightforward, and he's very, very respectful to the designers. Like when I was presenting to him, he was very, very respectful to me, and he listened to my advice as a professional. So he's the kind of guy where like he's got a very high, like a leadership kind of EQ, right? It's like he doesn't say things that might make other people feel like, like you're not really, you don't really know what you're talking about. Like he respect people, and then he let people express their feedbacks and their thoughts. And then he'll just kind of give a perspective comment on how he feel, without you feeling like, he's trying to tear your design apart. So that was the fun part. And I really like Chairman Xu. But some people they might give you a feedback like they're the design director, like they're the professional. And I think it's quite common cases in certain companies. But anyway, so with that said, I think it was a great experience. I think it was great that I've learned so much in terms of how to be able to communicate with people, how to be able to create good cross-function relationships and get other functions to be able to support design and be able to push design to at least the limit in terms of in that environment, how as good as it can possibly be. And obviously through that journey, there's so many other things like I spoke to you yesterday, and like I said, like creating a good product is not just design. It's a cohesiveness of everything combined. It's a great design, it's great engineering, it's great product itself, which is user experience and ergonomics and comfortability, driving experience, technology, the UI UX on the whole HMI part, and then be able to brand it very well, and then price it at a very, very, very accurate or very I guess reasonable price point for what the market you're trying to get into.
Sure.
And then collectively, that becomes a very successful product. So I feel like, again, when I was there, I feel like there was more reliance on the design, or I almost didn't even feel like it was design. I almost felt like it was more reliant on styling. Like I feel like there's a difference between styling and design. Like design is when you can literally define the product from 0 to 1 on the formability, on the philosophy, on the package, on the SOR, on the content, right, on the usability, on everything, right, on the engineering part. Even to me, that's design. And styling is when everything's already set. The architecture, the package, the cost, and all that, it's already set. And then they give it to the styling team, and they say, okay, now make it look good, right? And you don't really have too much boundaries to change. You can't change the hood height, you can't change the tire track, you can't change the rim size, you can't change the height of the car, you cannot change the structure of the seats, you cannot change the H point. In that kind of case, which a lot of times that's how it is.
You're saying this styling is more like aesthetics than form, right?
Well, style is I think styling is aesthetics and form, but I think it's very limited in terms of how much of the form you can change. So like let's say a lot of designers, they want to push the, let's say, the A-pillar back, right? We call it dash to axle sort of relationship. But if you have a restricted architecture, you can't do that, right? If your firewall and your H point is all the way in the front, then it's going to require to change the whole architecture in order for, or at least change a very, very large part of the architecture in order to achieve what the designer wants. In that case, you're limited. So it's almost like you're handcuffed by the limitation of the engineering. To me, then it becomes more of a styling over the package, right? But design is like, let's say, if something that's modular and you're designing exactly how you want it based on the formability, based on the feasibility, based on the whole architecture, meeting the best user experience and the criteria as a whole, as a collective whole. And then, of course, you have to make it look good because that's part of your job, right? So I feel like there's definitely a difference between the limitation part, right? And then that's how much it can empower you as a designer to be able to push that and do something, I think, a little bit more groundbreaking. Let's just put a groundbreaking, right? I think that's a good term. Is like, in order to create a groundbreaking product, the designer, I think, has to have a lot of say and a lot of influence, or having the power to push for big changes to enable that groundbreaking aesthetic or groundbreaking product design as a whole. But when you're restricted with a certain amount of area or a restricted canvas to do this design, there's not really much room for groundbreaking push when the supplier pretty much all have the same technology, when the engineering pretty much used existing platforms that was developed for, let's say, 5 years ago, or even sometimes 10 years ago, right? And then because of the whole manufacturing business case that they don't want to reinvest on a new architecture,
right,
that is going to create a lot of restrictions. These are realities of what designers have to go through each and every day, right? So again, I think I'm talking a little bit deep here about what the restriction, but so back to what I was saying earlier is that when I was in Beijing, I learned a lot, and I think for me it was another critical part of experience as a designer for me to be able to understand what other functions are really thinking and why do they want it that way. Because I think a very big thing is that I really encourage is, as a designer, don't sit in your cube or in your desk all day. And some designers, they don't want to talk to anybody, right? They just want to like put on their headphones and just sketch. Like, to me, I feel like is that a designer, or is that a stylist, right? Like someone that's just making cool sketch. Like I would say like a very good designer is somebody that's constantly out, talking to the engineers, talking to the product team, talking to the product planning team, talking to the product marketing team, talking to the branding team, talking to all these guys. Have lunch, have dinner, go out and don't just talk about work, but also talk about, like social stuff too. But to be able to, over the course of years, like I said, and what I did was I did it over the course of 3 years, right? I didn't do it in 3 months. And then I got to really understand where they're coming from. And then I really kind of almost learned like a real MBA in a way, right? Like how, what is a business case? Like, what is the BOM? Why are things, calculated that way? What is our ROI, and what is the manufacturing, strategy for us to, why is it so important to create a component strategy, right? Well, why a lot of times engineers want to like carry over everything, right? I mean, there's a reason. I mean, designers sometimes, they just want to make very, very cool, very pretty pictures, but we got to understand reality of a design is something that you got to build and you got to sell, and the company got to be able to make a profit. It's not just a, like a single one-off piece of art where, let's say, I don't know, like, even for like, say, my father, right, like, as a sculptor, like he can make something super cool and it's a one-off thing, right? And then he can put online, and if anybody's willing to pay for the price that he's asking, great. And then there's probably never going to be another one unless he casts a mold of it and then literally just duplicate it, right? But the same thing, right? So even the moment he decides to cast a mold and duplicate it, it becomes a big business case. So then he's got to have to calculate how much material cost it's going to be. How many pieces is he going to make, right? What's the life cycle or the life age of the mold itself, right? How many pieces is going to recreate? And then how is he going to sell it? Is he going to rent a store? All that is part of the BC. So as a designer, I think a lot of times they only think from just how to create a sculpture, but the whole business case is is on the bottom of the iceberg that a lot of times we don't see.
Sure.
So again, that is, I guess, a lot of the experience and a lot of the things that I've learned when I was in Beijing. And then at the same time, to be able to understand the Chinese market, the Chinese customer. We go to the first. I mean, we talk about first tier cities, Shanghai. Everybody knows Shanghai. We go to. We're in Beijing. Shenzhen. In Chinese we call it Beishangguang, right? So those are all like the first tier cities. But a lot of times is that designers need to understand first tier cities only have a small fraction of the entire population of China. A lot of the customers are actually in third, fourth, fifth, sixth tier cities. And nobody ever goes there and really do like real survey and real study and understand how much money per capita do these people make? What are the average professions? How much, what is their life? I guess what do you call it? Like the lifestyle, right? What kind of things do they buy? Do they buy Xiaomi? Okay, first tier cities, you'll see a huge population, a huge population buying iPhones, right? So iPhones, and then second tier cities, you'll see between iPhones and Huawei, right? And then third tier cities, you'll start seeing more Xiaomi or Oppo or other brands. And then third and fourth, fifth tier cities, you're going to start seeing less and less and less iPhones, and then maybe the entry models or cheaper models of the Huawei or more Xiaomi, right? And then this is called like the market, where as a designer, you got to understand the real market, not just saying I read a book or I read some article and suddenly I know about Chinese market, or I did a concept car for Beijing Auto Show and suddenly I know about the Chinese market. You got to go to the third, fourth, fifth, sixth tier cities, and you got to live there, and you got to be able to do mass surveys, go to people, knock on people's houses, and then go show them like photos of cars or photos of fashion and electronics. And then they will actually tell you a very, very objective answer based on what they will buy and why they will buy it.
Use cases will be completely different too. So
exactly. And then exactly, you're absolutely right. It's because when you have that clear objective data or survey, then you start to understand that as a designer, when you're designing first tier city products, it's no longer the same user experience as the third or fourth tier city products. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Because their need are very different.
Yep.
And their cost ratio, and then what they appreciate or what kind of priority that they seek tend to be different than first tier cities.
Yeah.
So anyway, so again, this is just another example I'm just talking about, but there's so many other examples, right? I mean, we're probably not going to be able to talk about all these in the next hour, but you know what I mean. So this is just one thing. So
go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, Frank, this is the first time that I've heard the distinction between styling and design. So this is great. And also, we spent the last hour and a half talking about the past, but we really want to talk about the present and the future, which is JIDU. And we're going to have to ask you to stay a bit longer because this is fascinating.
Sure, that's fine.
Yeah,
I told you yesterday. I said I want to give you guys some more time.
Yeah.
Because yesterday I was actually very.
So let's talk about JIDU. JIDU, how did you get to JIDU, and some of the process that you had to face, especially during this recent Shanghai lockdown, how that affected your whole cadence of these announcements, right? Because you were supposed to announce JIDU during the auto show, but that was delayed and all these got messed up. So talk about your journey to JIDU quickly, and then the kind of the process.
Because what's really interesting is that you went to two established companies, whether it's in the United States or it's China, really have long traditions, and then you go on to this joint venture that's a separate
the newest
entity.
Kid on the block.
Yeah. So can you tell us how you got recruited, and then how your first few days or first few weeks were?
Yeah. So those are very good questions. So I guess let me organize them based on timeline. So I got a call from somebody somebody that knows Robin. Let's just put it out. Somebody that knows Robin Lee, and then asked me, and actually first kind of told me a little bit about what I guess what Baidu wants to do with, potentially creating a intelligent car company and who's going to be the CEO. And then that's
because JIDU didn't exist at the time, right?
This was before the announcement.
This was way before the announcement. This was back in January.
Okay.
The announcement was in March. So the following person introduced me a little bit about I guess what the plan of creating what we know today as JIDU, and told me about who the CEO was going to be, and that's Joe. So Joe Xia, he's our CEO, and introduced. I didn't know Joe at that time, but that person introduced me to Joe, and then before I met Joe, I got to know a little bit about Joe through the fellow person, and then told me that Joe's background and his international background, and also not only in the automotive industry but also in the tech space, Mobike, right, and a lot of I guess more of artificial intelligence, AI, and software and intelligent vehicle, and then obviously also Mobike. Which was a very big venture. So I was actually quite impressed. And obviously, you were confirmed that you're going to join the company. For me, I was going to confirm I was going to join the company after I meet Joe and obviously Robin, and be able to have a conversation like today, be able to deep dive and get to know each other. And then when I met Joe, it was we had a 5-hour conversation that was just literally we were just literally talking about it was kind of like this, right? What's great about today's conversation is that we got really into the conversation, and then we're talking about what we wanted to do. And he asked me, what would you do as a designer? How would you design this car? How would you essentially design this robot car, or we call it robocar? And I was kind of explaining my thoughts, and it was a very, very deep discussion. So anyways, there was a lot of strategy discussion, future potential products, and the market space, and then what where JIDU is going to be placed in the sort of the EV space, right, or the EV intelligence space, and then it ended up to be a 5-hour conversation. And after that, I was like, this guy is the guy that I want to work for, because he's so clear minded. I got to tell you, I work really, really hard. I mean, I've been working a lot of hours, 14 hours a day, 16 hours a day. But I got to tell you, Joe, as a CEO, this guy works harder than me. No joke. No joke. I got to give it to you guys. The efficiency of a company is all about how hard, the leader, as a role model, or as somebody that's pushing the front line of the battle, work and show the prime example. And so Joe, he works super hard. I mean, this guy is literally he have multiple conference calls when he's in the taxi. When I'm in the taxi with him, he's in a conference call, or he's on his laptop, returning somebody's email. When I'm on the airplane, he's on the the mobile phone with a wireless, and then writing the strategy, or returning somebody's email, or talking to an investor, or he's nonstop. This guy is a machine. I think I'm a machine, but I'm if I compare to him, that's another level. This is the crazy part. The crazy part is when you think you're good enough, you realize there's somebody better than you. When you think you're smart enough, you'll realize that there's somebody smarter than you. When you think you work your butt off, and possibly out of 24 hours, when you work 16 hours a day, there's nobody that can work harder than you. And then you realize, wow, somebody's working harder than you. So anyways, I mean, I really admire Joe, and I look up to him, and then he really shows me what an incredible leader he is. And I also met Robin in a very early stage in Beijing, actually. And originally it was supposed to be a half an hour conversation, turned out to be a 2-hour conversation. And again, it was because we were so into the conversation of what JIDU was possibly going to be. But obviously, Robin spoke to me more of what he thought JIDU was going to be, and also asked me what kind of cars that I thought was appropriate for JIDU, and why. Right? It was a very, very nice discussion. I mean, Robin, he's probably I'm guessing probably one of the nicest billionaire I don't know how many billionaires I've met, but he's the only person I've met that's a billionaire. But he's the nicest billionaire that I think that I will ever meet. He's super nice. He's very humble, very down to earth. He doesn't act like he's a billionaire. He's just super chill. Looks like, just like any one of us, right? Just a very, very cool tech guy. So that's the moment I knew I was going to join the company because and at that time, the first few months, to be honest, I didn't even have any salary, but why did I do it? It was because, it was a startup and I felt like if we put in the effort, we put in the hard work and we do we put in the grind. And then if if the direction is correct and if we hire the right people for the team to be able to all work together and deliver this amazing product, hard work will pay off. But obviously, hard work, you got to have the right direction. If the direction is wrong, then you're just going to go to the wrong direction from the very beginning, right? We're pretty much working really hard every day, push through our product as soon as possible into the market. During this wave, we all hope that things get better, and I'm sure it will get better. It always does. It's a very natural cycle of how the social economy usually work.
And you guys have a compressed timeline with everything too, right? Like you're used to the longer timelines for product development, right? So
that's a very, very good question because at GM, back then it was like 18, 24 months for the design timeline, and we have very talented designers, a very, very professional team, and then obviously I think there's more than enough time to work on a project. And then obviously I worked at the Cadillac studio for quite some time, and when I moved to China, I think I suddenly I quickly very used to, or not used to, quickly became adapted to the new timeline, and then eventually, obviously, became very used to it because it was the way it was, and then that kind of compressed the time between, I guess, like 14 to 16 months. But like I was telling you the other day, right? Different companies, they operate efficiency differently, and for JIDU right now, we're literally, I mean, literally, we're taking all the experience from everybody. This is not just myself, but from the head of engineering, for myself and design team, and then we have product team, and then our product team is very different than the traditional OEM. Our product team is more of like a technology company. So all the product use case, the PRD, and then we have these the product definition before we even start the project. So we have everything all set up, and everybody is aligned with the same objective before we kick. And then kick off. That's when literally we're like rock. The efficiency is so high. We make decisions so fast. We call each other literally. I mean, like right now it's a 10 p.m. call, and I was telling you too yesterday. I was like, 10 p.m. call is considered an early call for me. I guess a late call would be maybe like a 3 a.m. call or 4 a.m. That would be a late call.
Oh, Jesus.
So like if you call me at 4 a.m., I would probably think you probably don't want, you don't want to wait till the next day. So it's probably something urgent. But if you call me around 12:30, 1 a.m., I would probably think you just want to talk about something that you want to get done tomorrow, just to kind of go over. So that's,
oh man,
the kind of system and culture that our startup company is all about. And it's really like a startup mentality. We grind and we work very hard as a team, and we cut out a lot of time that is pretty much inefficient and that is wasted in a normal larger corporation. When there's so many levels of decision making, there's so many reviews, right? There's so many reviews. There's the program review, there's the finance review, there's the product planning review, there's the engineering review, there's the design review, and let alone the design review, it's probably like one of the most out of the entire process. And then forget about it. Obviously there's the engineering review.
Sounds like these Cadillac nightmares are coming back in your head when you just said that.
I wouldn't say Cadillac nightmare. I think, to be honest, I've actually had a very, very good time and experience at Cadillac. I just think that it's just very, very different. There's a handful of people that are much more used to the bigger corporation sort of product development cycle period. They can be able to have more than enough time to be able to develop something. And to them, I also honor where they're coming from, right? Because I was there myself. There's a lot of time. There's a lot more I guess, room for, how would I say this? More room for mistakes. What I mean by that isn't necessarily delivering a product that is a mistake, but what I'm saying is throughout the process of the product development, there's probably mistakes and there's probably, inefficient or, indecisive decisions that they have more than enough time to be able to turn that around throughout the process. And for us, because we work at such a super high efficient status or level, time is literally everything, right? So we have no room for mistakes. So everything that we
Sure.
do, all the decisions that we make, has to be brainstormed over and over and over. I mean, we brainstorm throughout the weekend. We brainstorm throughout, literally like around the clock, and then that's what I guess makes our company so special, is because people that do join JIDU, they have so much passion in trying to really create something that is so incredible. And then, it might sound kind of naive to certain people, but it's not. It's not. It's kind of like Tesla when it began, and then I think Elon Musk obviously retained this very, very strong, passionate work culture, and it's all about efficiency. It's all about user experience, and it's all about working from the customer experience point of view, right? And that is how it essentially over the course of like 5 to 10 years, Tesla's product became more dominant and more dominant over the course of the years, become the global dominant automotive or technology automotive maker. Back in like 2011, 2000, when the Tesla Model S, the first generation, was showcasing the North American International Auto Show. I remember like everybody was bashing the car. Everybody was like,
Sure.
I like somebody that said good things about that car got bashed by other people. It's like, we're sitting at a bar, in Detroit, because too, we were talking about Detroit, and people are chatting, across the street from the Kobo Center, right? From the Kobo Center.
Yep.
And we were just talking about, hey, what do you think of, the latest, the good car of the year this year, and people list them out, and then, hey, what do you think are, the cars that it's like sketchy or don't really have a potential to succeed? And then people talk about it. So anyways, I think, again, it's a great experience for me as a car designer throughout my career. I think, if you ask me, like, do I regret to work at a certain place? Absolutely not. I absolutely honor and respect all the past experience that I've had, and also all the I think incredible colleagues that I've met. But I think now I'm just at a different type of sort of a company sort of a mission, a different type of company culture, and then we're so driven to do the best.
I think you made a good point too, because I think there are still some car companies that are still very product centered instead of user centered, right? And I think as technology becomes more prevalent in everything, not just cars, the user interface and the user centered design needs to take precedence, right? So I and I do remember that because I was working in Silicon Valley, and I saw some of the roadsters, the Tesla roadsters, and then they contacted me. I was working at Apple at the time, and they wanted to recruit Apple employees to come work in the sourcing teams and all that stuff. And I was like, dude, this company is like not going to survive.
Yeah.
And so now look at them. But
a lot of people doubt it. I mean, seriously, like everybody. I mean, not everybody, but almost everybody. Or I would say a lot of people didn't really take them seriously. Let's put it that way, right?
Yeah. Let me ask you this. When you were initially having these conversations with Robin and Joe, did they tell you about this compressed timeline? And how intimidating was that?
It wasn't really intimidating, to be honest, because I was literally up for anything. Like, I tell you, like, I don't know about you guys, but there's a certain point of your life when there's something that is so, like, you believe it so much that you just kind of close your eyes and you kind of quickly walk through the timeline, and then you quickly put in a few milestones and a few gates, and then you realize this is doable. You know what I mean? It's not like I had no idea what the hell I was doing, right? Like I knew, like, from zero to do one, how to do it. And then I just need to put together a picture on how to do it in a very efficient way, because like I said, a lot of times in other companies, a lot of the time is being wasted
Yes.
A lot of times being wasted. And like, I just make a very clear example of just a review itself, right? Sometimes somebody says something and then suddenly you're going back to the drawing board, and then there you go, 3 months gone or 6 months gone. Actually, 3 months for design, but for the project is actually longer because the engineering team is also delayed, right? Manufacturing team, assembly team is also delayed. So everything gets delayed. So then it becomes like 6 months or 9 months.
This is your co-host Lei Xing. Listening to Frank talk about his life journey, you can tell that he is very detail-oriented and has really good photographic memory. Of all the guests we've had so far on the Max episode, no one has shared more intimate details of their personal, educational, and professional journeys than Frank has. These obviously shaped who he is as a person and as a design professional. The two moments along that journey that stood out for me the most were the moment that he knew he wanted to get into automotive design and the moment that he knew he wanted to join JIDU. Coincidentally, the day before we recorded this episode, Frank had informed us that JIDU had won the coveted Red Dot Award. As it turned out later, it received one each for the Robo One concept and the Robo Charger. So congrats to Frank again on this huge recognition. Stay tuned for part 2 of this 2-part Max series as Frank goes into more detail about the culture and processes at JIDU, his design philosophy, features of the Robo One, and critique of some of the recent Smart EV model reveals.
Lei and I will be sharing more of our conversations with the men and women around the world, moving the EV, AV, and mobility sectors forward as part of this China EVs and More Max series. Some folks will be instantly recognizable, but some will just be people that are doing amazing things in the space that we think deserve to be highlighted. Don't worry though, Lei and I will continue to host our live weekly China EVs and More Twitter Spaces room that summarizes that week's most important news coming out of the China EV, AV, and mobility space. For those that can't catch the live show, you can find the China EVs and More pod on all major platforms or wherever you normally get your podcasts. As EV adoption reaches its global tipping point, it'll be even more important to stay updated on everything that's happening here. Lei and I are confident that China EVs and More is the best resource to do that. Until next time, as always, thanks for listening.